I am so excited you're here with us today because I got like royalty on the podcast today. Let's get right into this. Help me welcome head coach of Summer Creek High School down in the great state of Texas, Mr. Shelton Ervin. Shelton, how are you, sir?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Oh, well, you're big time, buddy. Let me tell you, if you haven't heard about Shelton Ervin yet, first of all, that means you're not following USTFCCCA or TTFCA or ABCDE, all these alphabets, right?
Acronyms.
But our guest today, Shelton, congratulations, man. You were recently named the Boys High School Coach of the Year by the USTFCCCA, man. That's bravo. That's a big deal. Congratulations.
It's a huge honor, man. And most importantly, I remember getting the phone call from Ed, and Ed nominating me for that for the state of Texas, and obviously winning the Texas Coach of the Year award, and then been in the running for the national coach of the and it was actually the last time I spoke to Ed, and of course everybody know what happened shortly after that phone call.
Let's make sure, because Ed was a dear friend of mine, so let's honor him appropriately. Okay. Tell us who exactly you're talking about, because this guy deserves it, buddy. Absolutely.
Yeah, he does. And then I apologize if I'm
all good
mentioning any competitors, but I know he's on the market, and he's on the advisory board for US track and field coaches, cross country coaches association, everything. So,
and we're talking about Big Ed. I can never pronounce his last name, Marcin Nikeyevich. He works for our friends at MF Athletics. It is just
former Texas A&M coach. Obviously, you won't find anybody in the state of Texas or across the country that say anything bad about him.
One of the greatest people in this world, who unfortunately passed away here in this past summer, and big loss for us in this sport. Just a great person for us here at Gill Athletics, great person for MF Athletics, our great partners there. Like you said, you could hunt all day and all night and you won't find not only will you not find a single person that'll say anything negative, you'll be hard pressed to find anybody who won't be able to say something positive about Big Ed, man. What a servant leader
type guy. Anything we needed and any support we needed for the track and field community and progressing the sport. He reminds me a lot of the job that you do with Gills, and then the partnership that you have with high school coaches, collegiate coaches, and track and field in general. He was that guy.
A great servant leader. We miss you terribly, Big Ed, man. We love you to death. Thank you for everything you've ever done for the sport of track and field, man. You made track and field better, and that's the best compliment I can give you. So continue on. You get the nomination. You find out you're nominated. How do you find out that you actually are selected as the boys coach of the year?
For the state of Texas, I've received that communication from Ed, and then I've received a call about a month ago, stating that I actually received the National Coach of the Year award, which was breathtaking in that sense. I received the number from New Orleans because that base is located in New Orleans, the 504, and I was kind of wondering if that was them on the other line making contact and giving me the award. So
was it Sam Seams?
It was Sam, correct.
Good old Sam. Love Sam, absolutely. Okay. So he calls and he says, "Congratulations, you've won the national." What do you think? I mean,
it's an organization. It's a convention that I've always wanted to be a part of. It. One of the tough things been at that high school level is that falls during our final exam week. So it's not a week that we can just get up and miss a whole week of school. So I never got a chance to get around and make it to the convention. But now that winning that National Coach of the Award, they fly me in for the convention and they put me up room and board, and I'll receive that award. I get to obviously see the Bowerman Award, a lot of the neat things that take place during that convention.
Going to a Mickey Mouse town, you going to Orlando,
Florida.
When you win the Super Bowl, you say, "I'm going to Disney World." You won the Coach of the Year award. You can say, "I'm going to Disney World." Yeah. Hey, here's the biggest part of your award. You're going to be able to meet me in person at the convention. That's really what this award is about, is being able to see me
when it's all said and done. And I've met you in person several times, whether it's through the TTFCCA convention. And then obviously I know you're a big partnership with University of Texas.
Yeah.
With how they do things in Austin.
Absolutely. And love the TTFCCA, love the people that have been involved in the past and are involved. Talked to Stu Cantor about a week ago, man. Just what a great organization, because it's a great state for track and field. So, I mean, it's just goes hand in hand. So Shelton, help us understand, what do you think led to being named the high school boys? I mean, I get to enjoy a coach every week, right? So I know how amazing coaches are around this country. What do you think was the piece de resistance, if you will? What led you to stand out amongst the other 49 worthy candidates?
Yeah, and there was definitely a lot of worthy candidates. Any candidate that survived and persevered through COVID and the pandemic should be up for the award, because
Amen.
this is obviously one of the most challenging years when it came to the sport. But
Great point.
ultimately, it was due to the coaching staff that I had and the athletes that we had this year, which 2020, that class lost track and field season, and we had a pretty talented team that year. I thought we could compete for a top 3 finish at the state meet. Fast forward to 2021, all these procedures and processes are put in place because of COVID. Meets are limited to 8 teams.
Right.
Qualifications, they only taken a little bit less qualification. It really allowed us to open up, and ultimately 7'1" high jumper, a 207-foot discus thrower, 13'3", 110 hurdler, a 152 half miler, a mile relay that was running 3:15, several 48 quarter milers. So we've had a pretty stacked team.
This was all on the same team?
All on the same team. I consider myself a little small college team. Anytime you have a 7'1" high jumper and then a hurdler that was running that fast, we had a plethora of athletes that was pretty talented.
So before we talk more about your season, I forgot, we got to give a shout out. One of the main sponsors for that USTFCCCA Coach of the Year is the U.S. Marines. Always got to give a shout out. Your Marines, you're awesome for that alone. But to support our organization in the USTFCCCA and support track and field and our high school coaches, bravo, shout out to the U.S. Marines. I got to make sure we plug those guys because we appreciate them very much. So talk to us about this year. You're right. I forgot Texas put in some restrictions for this year, the less amount of teams per, which made it harder on teams to find meets sometimes and JV meets and things like that. So talk us through this year. You got a good squad. It ain't easy when even if you have a good squad.
It's not, and we had no big invitationals this year, no big 20, 30, 40 team meets due to the COVID thing. So the most teams that could be at one meet was 8 teams. So we had teams and meets that we dominated, and that's only because we didn't have a well-rounded 7 other teams to compete against. When it came to, if you had 30 or 40 teams, you will get somebody to compete against your high jumper or somebody to compete against your hurdlers, type situation. So no Texas relays, no TSU relays. TSU relays was on a smaller level, it was only 8 teams. So you had no big invitations to really go up against and really show how you will fare against everybody in the state this year.
How did that impact, and did it impact how you formulated your practices, your meet schedule, and how you thought about qualifying people to the state meet?
Absolutely, because with 8 teams, most of the meets were straight finals. So we had no prelims and finals until we got to the actual regional meet. So we went a whole season without running rounds, which is pretty tough because traditionally we train athletes for round. So when we got the word that it will be 8 teams and how everything will be set up postseason, it kind of altered or changed our training method a little bit because we didn't have to train for multiple rounds like we would during a traditional year. Basically, our kids will run 1 or 2 rounds. I mean, one time and have to be stellar at that one race and that one opportunity until they got to the regional meet, which was what I want to say meet number 9 or 10 was the first time they did a prelim in the final.
And help us understand, for those of us outside of Texas, start with how we qualify for the state meet in Texas.
Pretty interesting when it comes to it. I'm not a big fan of the area meet myself, but we have the district meet and top 4 qualify from the district meet to the area meet. Okay. The area meet is against 2 area schools, which is 2 district schools. So District 21 would go against District 22. So the top 4 from 21, the top 4 from 22 would give you 8 individuals in a heat or in an event or in a flight. And then the top 4 from that 8 would qualify for the regional meet. Technically, only 16 athletes qualify for the regional meet, which is pretty exclusive when it comes to the state of Texas. That's out of our whole region area. So only 16 individuals in the Houston area qualifies for that regional final. And then obviously regionals is a prelim and the finals, top 8, and then only top 2 from the region qualifies for the state meet.
Yeah, say that again. So at each event, I want to make sure everybody hears this. You have these regional meets, and only the top 2 in each region in each event go
4
on.
regions out of the state of Texas.
Yeah, 4
top
regions.
2.
So that means when we go to the state meet, it's finals only. It's 8 100-meter runners, 8 milers, 8 discus throwers, jumpers, etc. Right?
And then a few years ago, they implemented the 9th place qualifier. So the best 3rd place finisher out of 4 regions will be able to qualify for the state meet, which means that Texas UT has a 9-lane track, which means the 8 top 2, and then the best 3rd place finisher out of all 4 regions will be the individual that get called up.
Now, I remember when I coached college track, it was kind of a joke, but it's not really a joke, that there were plenty of kids who didn't qualify for the state meet who got full ride Division I, like big time offers here.
A lot of individuals felt like the regional meet is your state meet because of how competitive it is just to get to the state meet and how fast and how talented you have to be just to make it out of that. Be in that top 2 to qualify and have a chance at the state championship. So a lot of talent is left at home in the regions. Some regions are more talented than others. We're located in Region 3, which is in the heart of the city of Houston, with the outskirts of the Woodlands and Katy and stuff like that. We consider ourselves the toughest region in the state of Texas, but I know Dallas will have other things to say about that. But
I don't want to start a Texas fight here, okay?
Region 3 is pretty tough and pretty competitive as far as just depth and of talent and athletes. Dallas obviously is pretty fast too, but Houston area just is pretty loaded as far as your 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th place team is pretty fast also.
And something Texas does that's unique, and I'll call it controversial, meaning some people like it, some people don't. I'd love to get your take on it. Is so traditionally scoring for like the 100, right? So first place gets 10, then 8, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But on the relays, we double points in Texas, right? So 20 points if you win the 4x1. Is that? Do you know understand the history of that reasoning? Is that because there are so few individuals that go? It helps bring more participants to the state meet, or what? Do you know what the reasoning is behind that?
I don't know the reasoning behind it, but obviously it's that individual, instead of scoring 2 points, they're scoring 5 points with 4 individuals on that relay, breaking that up, the point totals as far as that relay, bringing in 20 points versus 10 points, which is for 4, what is that, 2 point?
Yeah, 2.5, yeah,
2 or whatever, 2.5 or whatever per athlete. So I don't think it's anything that should be challenged. I know a lot of individuals like to get rid of it. Me personally, as the president of the TTFCA, I like to see a distant relay be added to the state meet, the DMR preferably. All the data that we did on the 4x8, anybody with a strong 4x4 would have a good talented 4x8 because there's a correlation between a quarter miler being able to hop in the 8. But if you have a DMR, you got to have a good 1200 and a good mile leg, which favors the distance teams for the state of Texas.
You do 4x1 and 4x4?
4x1, 4x4, 4x2.
Oh, you do the 4x2. Okay, so 4x2.
Correct.
Yeah. So, and that's where I hear, when I say controversy, that's where I hear people, first of all, it's 20 points. So it favors sprint schools because it's the 4x1, 4x2, 4x8. There's no distance part of it. Yeah. You hear a lot about that 4x8, right? That's in a lot of state meets. So that makes sense in that.
I can tell you with me having a talented several 48 quarter milers, 47 quarter milers, I can put a 4x8 together with individuals that are traditionally not half milers. Obviously, just give them a little bit more aerobic base.
Right.
And then give them some acclimations, meaning some 600s or some 1,000 or whatever, and they can hop in and go sub 2 with no problem and give me a competitive 4x8. So that's why that DMR is extremely important to separate the two.
I love that idea. I mean, it gives DMR is a fairly exciting race, especially indoors.
Yeah. And you were the college coach yourself. I was a college coach myself. I enjoyed the DMR. I still enjoy the DMR, especially how fast it's gotten over the years with the record dropping each year. Oregon obviously running a pretty fast one this past year with Cole Hockley. And one of your questions was, how did you end up winning the state championship or getting nominated for that? Because we did it in a different way. We only had one relay at the 6A level to score at the state meet. We basically won first place in the high jump, discus, first place in the 110 hurdles, and then second in the 800, and then second in the 4x4. So we did it a non-traditional way, which we didn't have multiple relays at the state meet to win the 6A title.
Yeah, and help us understand. You say 6A. How many divisions are in Texas?
6A is the largest classification as of now. A couple of years from now, they're going to add a 7A division, because we have schools with 5,000, 6,000 students that's competing against the cutoff at 6A is like 2,225. So there's a big gap between 6,000 and 225 to make that classification for 6A.
That makes sense. I want to make sure we explain that, because we got listeners from Connecticut to Oregon, and they're like, well, we're 1A and 1B. What does 6A mean? What is that? Some here in Illinois, we were 2 divisions for quite a while, big school, small school. And then they went to 3 about, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 years ago. So every state's a little different. That's good. So it's
first state championship we won, we was 4A. And at that time, the biggest classification was 5A. So over the last, I think back in 2006, they went to a 6A division, which made the second biggest classification 5A. But that's also when our growth was happening with the school, where we were just established in 2009. I've been there since the school opened in 2009. So I'm the only head track and field coach for Summer Creek High School.
It's interesting how you composed the winning score for you. So, the high jumper and the hurdler. But only one relay. I would have, I'm a betting man, right? So if you'd have told me to make a bet, I'd have said you scored, if not won, all 3 relays, or, at least 2 of them scored high, but only the 4x4.
Right. And traditionally, if you hear somebody about the 6A level, they're going to say that you had multiple relays there to win it. And that wasn't the case for us. It was one of those situations with the year being so unique, and us having athletes who chose not to run this season, meaning that it left us shorthanded. We decided to focus on what we was good at and not stretch our athletes thin. So we focused more on open events. We kind of tinkled with the different relays, and then we made a decision to go after the relays that we was actually had a chance to get out of the regional meet to the state meet. And that's how we ended up with the 4x4, and then everybody else focusing on their open events.
See, a lot of other sport coaches don't think track and field has strategy. Like, I love that you're explaining, like, oh, we had to actually make some decisions and some sacrifices and put our eggs in this basket. I love that there was actual strategy going into your areas and districts.
You do on your own. You bump off of other coaches. One of the presentations that I did prior with Texas high school coaches, you really got to network and bump things off of other like-minded coaches, because what you're trying to figure out and process, someone else is doing the exact same with their team and with their situations that they have when it comes to putting the best product out there and then getting the best individuals out to the state meet.
So holistically, and without saying score the most points, Coach, you've won 2 state titles in the most competitive state in the country. I don't know. I just angered everybody in Florida and California for sure. What does it take to win a big school state championship in the state of Texas, holistically here?
I can tell you that ours is a numbers game. We have over 140 athletes in our program, which is a big situation in myself. And it takes a big village to be able to manage those. Obviously, I'm managing grades, I'm managing personalities, I'm managing equipment, I'm managing academics with individuals that we're the second biggest program in the school. I have 80 athletes in my track and field athletics alone, which is straight track and field kids. And then I have another 25 plus that's coming from cross country. And then the remainder coming from basketball and football and wrestling type situations. So we manage 140 kids. We've grown to that number. Obviously, we opened up our school in 2009 with 800 kids. We now have 3,300 kids in our school.
Holy cow.
It's a numbers game. And I learned that from Todd and Tate at Atascocita High School in Kingwood, that you got to have a numbers. You got to have 4 in every event, 3 in every event if you can. And you got to develop each program, pole vault, discus, high jump. Every event has to be developed and has to be given the proper amount of attention. And then from that, you create diamonds in the rough, and you create opportunities where you create a total team, a team like you saw this year out of us type situation.
So a lot of these Coach of the Year awards really, this is just my opinion, should be Staff of the Year awards, as you're talking about. You mentioned so many different events that you're scoring at. So
not to cut you off, Mike, and that's the unique thing about it. So the how can I word this? The least productive coach on the staff at the state meet was me. My high jump coach won a high jump gold. His athlete won a high jump gold. My discus coach won a discus gold. My twin brother led his 110 hurdler to a state champion in gold. And both my athletes in the high jump and the 4x4 finished second and silver place medal. So I don't even have a gold medal, but 3 coaches on my staff coach gold medalists at the 6A state meet. So that shows you how dynamic the staff and the athletes was.
So you mentioned it takes a village. So this is a good time, since you were the least productive. Why don't we shout out these other coaches? Tell us who these guys and gals are so we can give them some props.
Elton Ervin, my twin brother, is the hurdle coach. He's arguably the best hurdle coach in the state of Texas this year with the production. He had several guys running pretty fast in the 110 hurdles. His 300 hurdler as a sophomore was going 37.4, who's returning this year to have a great year. And then ultimately he led that young man to the 13.3 finish, which is the state.
That was a sophomore?
The 37.4, 37.5 guy is Donovan Bradley, who's just a sophomore, who's returning. Obviously 2 more years with him type situation. And then we had Thomas Lane, who's a University of Houston graduate, jumped and at the University of Houston, worked with Carl Lewis, and then Tom Telez. He coached a 7-1 high jumper to the state championship. Of course, the kid only jumped about 6'8" at the state meet due to the conditions and things of that nature. But he's 7-1 on the high of the year, was pretty dynamic.
10 points is 10 points, right? 6'8", 7'8", who cares? Score the points.
There's money in the bank. So, and then Coach Ornette, who coached the discus thrower, Kevin Grubbs, who's at the University of Sam Houston State University, went from 160 in 2020 to throwing 207 feet his senior year. So a huge jump as far as how far he actually threw, and that's a testament to his work ethic and coaching.
Wow. Holy cow. So what do you do as the head coach? You got this coaching staff, these guys, family, literally family. What are you doing? You're the president of TTFCCA. What are you doing for professional development for them as far as learning more? I mean, you mentioned some amazing people, right? Tom Telez, Carl, Leroy, and those guys. What are you doing to help kind of like encourage them? Hey, I know we're good, but we got to keep getting better.
I give them all the toys and tinkles they need. We go to professional developments. We attend the TTFCA clinic together. But ultimately, if they needed any type of products that's going to make them better. My twin likes the hurdles that has the little the orange hurdle that you go and you had a hurdle through the box type situation. Coach Arnett liked the little small hammers for the discus in order to work on technique in that, or they need a lighter distance, or what is that? The circle ring, porter circle ring, any product that they need that's going to make them successful and allow us to be productive, even on increment weather days. We can do those inside with the Coach Arnett and wanting rubber shots or rubber discus type situation. Any leader of a program should be invested in all those groups. We do pool vaulting where we pole vault in the pool. So we leave poles inside the building. That way, if there's inclement weather, we can pole vault inside the pool, or we have a sliding box that we got for the vaulters. That way they can pole vault inside and just do some plants. So my growth and the staff success was me investing into the tools they need to be successful. And the old days of just sending kids home because it's raining outdoors, or the discus or field is wet, those days are long behind us. There's so many things you can do to still work on getting better as a program.
What do you do now? You're in Houston, so maybe we don't need this too much, although it does rain fairly hard. So there are sometimes. What do you do for indoor practices and stuff? I'm assuming, I don't believe you have an indoor facility. So
we don't. And a lot of the Dallas schools do, because they're close to obviously the Oklahoma and Kansas, so they get a lot more cooler temperatures than we do. But we run indoors inside the gym. We have some of those rubber mats that you put down that you can do some small acceleration zone. Obviously, breakaway hurdles that you can do hurdling indoor zone. So we developed a program, and Coach Ahmad Roper joined us a couple years ago. We went to some treadmills. Let me say this specifically: treadmills that are not motorized, but treadmills that you have to generate the force on. So it's not a motorized treadmill that's helping you run because it's on an axis. This is a treadmill that's a curved treadmill, sort of like you see out in Arizona at Stu McMiller. They have with their group
Altus,
where you actually got to generate force and you got to be up tall type situation. We invested in several of those for indoor practices.
I love that because I wanted to make sure people didn't think like, oh, Summer Creek with this 3,000 plus students, they're rich, they got an indoor facility, but you're improvising just like a lot of us out there.
Absolutely. And I come from Westbury High School, which we had to be unique and dynamic in that aspects, and learn from Coach Rose Bremer, who's the University of Texas former coach, and then Andrew Blanks, my former high school coach, where we had to be improvising and unique in our approach to increment weather days and things of that nature. So I can tell you that the 7'1" high jumper was only jumping 5'6" out of middle school. Kevin Grubbs, who's the discus thrower that threw 207, couldn't make most of his teams in the middle school, so he didn't throw much because he couldn't make the travel team. Barry Richards, who was the 110 hurdler, he did not win district as a middle school. So a lot of these athletes we had to develop. We didn't get any prodigies. Darius Rainey, who's a 152, 46 quarter mile, is probably the closest thing we got. And that's because he was running, 201 in middle school, which is good, but it's not sensational. Brandon Miller, type 800, but still talented and gives you something to work with.
You mentioned our good friends over at Altus, Stu McMillan and those guys. What else do you do? You mentioned TTFCA. What other kind of coaching education do you guys consume, whether it's USATF or USTFCCCA? There's several organizations out there now. What do you guys do?
My brother loves the Sammy Dabbs. Dabbs will put on clinics throughout the year. My brother attend them and obviously be a part of it. And he does a great job to make sure that he gives credit back to Dabbs as far as what he learned and what he implemented with his groups. And then the other thing, we championship videos, or we really try to develop all event areas, and that goes to me. One of the things I do as a leader, I make time now as I've gotten more seasoned to get around and see the vaulters vault, see the throwers throw. I will shut down my practice, or I'll have my assistant handle the rest of the practice. That way I can get over to see some of the event areas, which is significant because when I see them jump 16 feet at practice and in the competition, it's not a shock because I got a chance to go around and see them. When I see him throw 200 feet in practice, it's not a shock because I saw him let off some great throws in training and things of that nature. So all that stuff allows me to have conversation with those athletes, encourage them, and then obviously celebrate with them because I've seen the hard work.
It's amazing when we talk about the difference between high school and college coaching. One is not better than the other. They're just different, even though we're in the same sport, right? You're teaching classes in the day. You've got 140 kids. It's amazing. You have 140 kids that also are 14 to 18-year-olds, and they've got their own issues and things coming along, right? Whether it's, the family, video games, academics, other sports, etc. It's just really amazing, Shelton. You represent, being here today as the boys coach of the year, you represent what our high school coaches are doing on a daily basis around this country. There's Shelton Irvins in New York and Iowa and Nebraska that are, out there working just like you are with your staff to help them improve. And it's just great leadership to see what's going on around our country in our high schools, which is really our grassroots for this, right? If we don't have coaches and programs like you, our college system isn't as good and our Olympic system isn't as good. Bottom line.
And I try to advocate for those coaches to create roundtables in their community or in their state where they get like-minded individuals together and they can have conversations. So Mike might know something about fundraising that I don't know. So if I sit down at the table with you, whether it's breaking bread or just sitting down and talking track, then it's some ideas that I can do to help better my programs that I didn't think about. Shelton could be going through some administration issues with his administrators not supporting. And I can give you some example, Mike, because now your administrator is telling you now you can't get out of school early. So if coaches can get together and have roundtable discussions and sit down and conversate more, then it can allow us to be more efficient and then obviously problem solve a lot easier, because what you're going through, somebody else is already gone through or about to go through, and you can curve that with a roundtable discussion.
Yeah, there's strength and knowledge in numbers.
Absolutely.
That's right. That's great.
I've noticed that the distance coaches in the state of Texas do a great job of that, where they network and they sit down. Jerry Screen, Mike Gibson, a lot of the great distance coaches sit down and they actually converse, and they share things, and they have conversations. They might have a beer together, but they sit down and have that way they can grow as individuals, and their programs can benefit from it.
Yeah, that's it right there. You hit the magic word, right? Grow, right? We ask our athletes to grow and do better and do things differently. We got to be asking and holding ourselves and our staffs accountable in that.
Absolutely. I mean, accountability is huge for me. I try to, complacency is something that cannot take place in my playing, even if it's holding difficult conversations. I can tell you I have an identical twin brother, and I've even held him accountable, and he told my mom on me. But my mom don't run my program. That locker room is something that's very valuable, and something that must stay clean and stay safe as far as protecting everybody valuable. So that conversation was difficult too, but it also is something that he understands that it's a vital part of protecting me and protecting the kids' valuables type situation. So accountability is extremely important. Difficult conversations. We meet once a week, Monday. Let's say practice in at 4:30. All the coaches stick around. Let's just have a quick briefing where we talk about the upcoming week, talk about things that we need to work on, and then obviously just have that conversation about things that we're seeing out of our groups, our event groups, before we get to that competition on Saturday. So those things can say, it could be 10 minutes, it can be 20 minutes, but definitely just touching bases with your different event area coaches to make sure that everybody is on the same page, and accountability is taking place throughout that whole program. So I try to tell them, if my boss is putting pressure on me, that means I put pressure on you, which means that you put pressure on the kids. It's a snowball effect that if there's pressure and I put pressure on my coaching staff, the way that we say it, that rent is due at the end of the week, everybody is responsible for paying rent. There's no freeloaders. So that means you're scoring points at the meet that weekend. You're not eating out our refrigerator for free. If you didn't pay rent, then you're not eating, or you're having a whole conversation with them to make them feel that we got to do better. We got to work harder. That way we can contribute and score points for the team.
I love that. We're going to have so many coaches this next season coming up saying rent's due. Got to pay rent, man. That's awesome.
It's due for us as coaches and as leaders. So we got to pay it also.
So let's take a step back here, Shelton. It's amazing the season you had. Maybe it's the best season you've ever had, and there's more seasons to come. You got a young team there. Let's learn a little bit more about you. One of the first questions I have about you, my friend, I'm a big Twitter guy, right? I'm on Twitter more than maybe I should be sometimes, right? My Twitter handle is pretty boring, pretty easy, right? It's just my name, Mike Cunningham. That's boring. You have one of the, I dare say, coolest Twitter handles in the world. If you want to reach out to Shelton, you just go on Twitter and look for the Angry Half Miler. I can't make that up. The Angry Half Miler. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that you were an 800-meter runner at some point in your life. Tell us where that came from.
One of my mentors, and I reference a lot of great half milers, whether it was and Francie, that was at A&M.
Elaine. Mm-hmm.
Not Elaine, Francie. I can't think his name now. My guy at KU, who's one of my favorite half milers also. And then John Marshall, who's at Villanova, who's a 143 himself. A lot of great hard. Kadivas Robinson. I really studied all the great half milers. So I pull a little bit from everyone. Red Wine is the guy I'm thinking of.
Stanley, yeah.
Stanley Red Wine. So I was a half miler. My point was with that is Stanley Ridwine stated that half milers made some of the best coaches because they had to deal with the sprint side of it, and they had to deal with the cross country side of it, the distance side of it. So they had half milers are one of those individuals that has a pass where they can hang out with sprinters and then also hang out with distance runners because there are individuals that have the best of both worlds when it comes to their dynamic and their makeup. And some half milers even was hurdlers at one point or had to do hurdles, which they can hang out with the hurdlers for. So the half milers are individuals as coaches. Some of the great half milers are individuals that have a plethora of knowledge because they had to work with multiple event groups. They did cross country. They did sprinting and ran on the 4x4. And they also probably hurdled at one point. I did a lot of hurdle drills. So I got the angry half miler from high school. I had a kid that tried to pass me in the inside lane, and I gave him a little nudge, and he just so happened to fall off the track. And my best friend, Chris Cunningham, came to me and stated that, dude, you're an angry half miler. And that stuck with me since 1999, the angry half miler and nudging a guy that I was, who kind of drifted to prevent me from passing him. Since he drifted into my lane or drifted to try to stop me from passing him, I gave him a little nudge to show him.
Well, first of all, this Chris Cunningham guy sounds like a genius. I don't know.
I know, right?
It just sounds like a really sounds like a smart guy there. So where did you take your half miling skills? Did you get a chance to run in college?
I did. I ran at the University of Kansas. I signed my national letter of intent to KU with Gary Swartz. I did 1 year in KU before transferring to the University of Houston and spending the remaining of my time with Leroy Burrell and the University of Houston coaching staff. So 1 year at KU in Lawrence, Kansas, and then my remaining time was spent at the University of Houston.
Did you grow up in Houston? Is that why?
I did.
Yeah. Okay.
I did. I was the inner city of Houston, HISD, which is Houston Independent School District, and went to Westbury High School, who's known for some pretty famous alumni, and Raisin McIntosh, Stephanie Durst was at LSU, Benny Brazil, who's the LSU assistant coach right now, and Bono Kamadi, who was a pretty darn good hurdler at Baylor University. So
and an amazing mom.
And Miss Kamadi, they were all doing my time at Westbury High School. So I learned from quite a bit of talented individuals.
Well, I mean, looking back on that now, when you were in the muck at Westbury, did you realize what was surrounding you at the point? You mentioned all those names and, the people even before that we haven't mentioned and after. Like, did you get a sense like you were in a kind of a special time and place, or was it just commonplace? That's just where you grew up.
I didn't, because we were so angry because our girls was so talented. Our girls was coming out for four or five state championships, and we was trying to always compare ourselves or get to their level. But men's state championships is so extremely hard to come by because football is in the equation. So that means your school usually have to have a good football program to get talented football/track athletes. So we was always trying to get to their level competitively wise, not knowing that we was actually pretty darn good ourselves, although we wasn't achieving the level that the girls was achieving with their 4 state championships during that time frame.
And back then you couldn't even there was no internet really. So you couldn't compare what are kids doing in California, Florida, et cetera. You only knew your area basically.
We used DieStat and we used Texas Track to do it, and then Texas Track and they was doing a lot of their rankings and things of that nature. So we did team rankings and things of that nature to really measure ourselves.
So when you were at Houston and you're studying, were you thinking about becoming a coach or a teacher? What was your thought process there for a career?
I did. I ended up joining the staff for 3.5 years at the University of Houston. That allowed me to learn more underneath Leroy Burrell. So my dynamics is different than most high school coaches because I did serve underneath a pretty talented staff. And I was able to steal, and I'm going to tell you, if you're not stealing from some of the great coaches, then you're doing yourself a disservice. Soaked up everything like a sponge. I worked with Leroy Burrell, worked with Teresa Fuquet, who's the head coach at HBU with the cross-country aspect of things. And then obviously, Coach Tellez, Big T, was coming around and working with the Army team that was training out there with Milton Mallard, Quincy, and Rashawn Griffin, a lot of talented athletes, Sandra Glover, who was an Olympian and 400 hurdler. So I was blessed to be around, obviously, another one of my mentors, Floyd Hurd, who's also on the staff, who was an Olympian in the 200. So I was blessed to be around a lot of talented coaches to be able to soak up and steal everything possible from them. It's one of the reasons why I coach everything on the track except the hurdles. So that's the other unique aspect of me. I coach the 100 guys, and I also coach the 3,200 guys. So I'm unique in that aspect, which I would like to turn over at some point. I like to give up the sprinters because they're the divas. But at the end of the day, I haven't found anybody that has as much knowledge as I have to be able to turn that program over to.
You mentioned learning from some really amazing people: Floyd Hurd, Teresa Fouquet, Carl Lewis, Leroy Burrell. And by the way, Coach Burrell, if you're listening, just know that we love you. I'm gonna leave it at that. Just know that we love you and thinking about you and praying for you guys and your family and everybody surrounding that. Those guys are amazing, right? Those coaches are awesome. But in this world, my experience, there is this rarefied air. It's maybe 5 coaches in the world, right? Like the Bouchek Snyder type of people.
Right.
And Tom Telez is one of those.
Yeah, he's a walking legend. So
rarefied air. What was it like?
I credit him for my first state championship in 2013. He came out to the school. He spoke to the guys. We did a lot of. He's big on form running and technical work, and it really helped catapult us at that 2012, 2013 year to win that state championship, where it gave us the confidence. And I think at that time he was in his 70s, and then of course now he's in his 80s, and he's still mobile and he's still getting around. He's a legend. What
was it like when he would walk out into the track? Was there like the silence and like, okay, let's just listen. Let's, like you said, to your point about stealing, this is the only time we're going to encourage you to steal. Was it just like listening? I just feel like I'd be taking a notepad every time he did anything. I'd just be writing it all down.
Absolutely, because he's an individual that also studied. I mean, I talked to a college coach that was in the SEC this week, and he was telling me how he's cut from the Tom Telez tree, and then Vince Anderson is cut from the Tom Telez tree. A lot of these prominent coaches have a lot of the foundation that's rooted from Tom Telez as far as the running form and the mechanics of sprinting, block starts, and things of that nature. And then and I was a beneficiary of that also, which is pretty dynamic for a half miler to be able to gain that. And I've been accepted into that fraternity of coaches from Coach Burrell, who's one of my mentors. And then obviously the University of Houston family to be well respected for what I've done. Not just my time as a manager / coach at the University of Houston, but what I've established on my own at the high school level also.
You said you spent 3 years there after graduation. Where did you go to next?
I opened Atascocita High School in 2006. We finished up Sacramento State NCAA Nationals. I was on a plane, and the NCAA's is one of those situations that right after the national NCAA meet is getting ready for the U.S. Juniors, U.S. Nationals, and then the incoming athletes. I had an epiphany that, I need to go get certified to teach. And I end up watching LSU set the men's 4x4 record, the 259 in Sacramento State.
Whoa, hold on. What year was that? That's 05.
2000. No, was that 05?
Shelton. That was my last collegiate coaching.
Yeah, that was 05. You're right, because 06 was my first year at Atascocita High School that we opened. So
05, I'm at Mississippi State working with the 4x4 team. We run 3-0, 3-0-1 and get 5th because Xavier Carter, Willie Kelly.
Tennessee had Justin Gatlin on their leg.
No, Jay was out, I think, at this point.
Gatlin was out that year.
Yeah, but this was Willie Kelly, Xavier Carter. This is when, so it was then.
South Carolina had a good year.
I think they were up there. Texas Tech, Minnesota. That's when Adam and whatever his name
Adam
was.
Steele.
Yeah. We
had some talented athletes.
Like I said, we run 3 flat 3.1, and it's like we're supposed to win, and we get 5th, and LSU's up there setting the national. I was like, you know what? I was a little bit like you. I was like, man, this ain't for me, man. I just need to go do something else.
Yeah, that was my last. After that one, I was like, man. Living out of the hotel bags, packing and stuff like that. Like, and been the lowest man on the total pole. Like, I need a pay raise, and the best way was the high school level. So
you went and opened up a high school.
Atascocita High School. I helped open Atascocita in 06, and then I helped open Summer Creek in 2009.
That's interesting. That that must have helped you out, having done it once before, that experience.
Absolutely. The Tascasita prepared me for my opening of Summer Creek High School in 2009.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, it's important to talk about this a little bit, where you talked about you're flying back from Sacramento State. You got juniors coming up and seniors coming up, and July 1 starts recruiting all over again, and then you blink and the cross country kids are back, and then the track kids, etc. It never ends.
It never ends for the collegiate level.
The way we do it,
always cycling and spinning.
Yeah, and we get, when I used to coach level 1s for USTF, and invariably we would get high school coaches that would ask us like, hey, how do I get to coach college? And I'm like, maybe you don't. Maybe you don't want to, and here's why. And no one's better than the other. They're just different.
Right, they are.
I love that you kind of had that, self-awareness is a big thing, right? And so I love that you had the self-awareness
and
of like
stepping out on faith. You get to a point where you felt like you learned everything you could possibly learn. I can stay underneath, stay in this branch and in this tree and feel safe and feel secure, or I can spread my wings and jump off the branch and see if I can fly and if I can hold off myself. So I stepped out on faith, and it all worked out for me, which was dynamic.
You flew pretty well, my friend. That was a pretty good step out. So Shelton, we're talking to you today because you won the National High School Coach of the Year. However, we're a big believer that wherever you are, whether you're in the Houston area coaching or small town Alabama, in the desert of Nevada, if you're coaching track and field, like, it's a precious thing, right? Because you have the ability to affect the lives of young people right there where your 2 feet are. What kind of parting advice here as we wrap up today? I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, so I'm going to talk a little bit while you think after I ask it, so you have some time to think. But what kind of advice would you give? You've got every high school coach out there listening to you right now. You're a big deal, rightfully so. What advice would you give coaches out there on their dailiness of coaching? Not like, how to win a state title, how to coach a 13-1, all those kind of things. What does it take to be successful, not just on the track, but as a high school coach, a head high school coach? What kind of advice would you give to other high school coaches out there right now?
It's 2 things, and it goes back to my speech I did from Texas High School Coaches Association, and it was over controlling the controllable. There's a lot of things that's out of your control that you cannot control, that you want to control, but you gotta zone in on what's in front of you and what you have there. A kid not being at practice, you have no control of. You got to focus on the 141 kids that's still at practice type situation. So establishing that next man up. We have a motto where we try to establish a motto each year. This past year, we won a state championship. The motto was, "This is the way," from Mandalorian. This is the way you do it. This is the way we did it. And especially with navigating through COVID, this is the way. Trust me, this is the way. This is the way. So I would encourage any coach to come up with a yearly motto. When we won in 2013, it was keep the eyes on the prize, because we didn't want to get distracted. We was dominating. We was pretty successful. We didn't want the get complacency going on. So coming up with a motto and putting that on a t-shirt and reliving it, hashtagging it on your Twitter is extremely important for the culture of your program. That culture is extremely important as far as establishing and how it looks from the different regiments, whether it's a practice aspect of it or whether it's the meet aspect of it. The way that I like to tell coaches that there's a level of excellence that you must achieve or that you must operate at. Our big thing was, and you're wondering why did we have a gap of state championship between 2013 and 2021, is because we went through a football growth where I made a decision where I wasn't going to rely on football players anymore. I was going to establish my own coaches, and football players was going to be in addition to the athletes that I already have. And that's me taking control of it. And then obviously the football was in addition to the track and field kids. And that's why we was able to build up to having 80 kids in our track and field athletics and usually using that number of programs. So that was something I can control. I can't control football athletes come out of there. I can't control 7-on-7 football and what they do on the weekends. So that really helped us establish our culture and establish our philosophy when it came to being successful in our program.
You said you mentioned 2 things, and maybe I mentioned, you said control the controllables. Was culture the number 2 thing that?
Yeah. Culture is, you got to establish that culture as far as the way that you move and the way that you do things. So one of the The best programs I've seen that has a culture is like the Woodlands and Fort Bend Marshall program. They have that culture, whether it's dressing the same, looking the same, the way that we move at a meet, the way that we handle ourselves and handle success and things of that nature. That's the culture that you need to establish and you have to have going within your system. So that culture is extremely important. And it also means that usually you have second sport coaches that come through your system. Our culture got to a level that we don't need a second sport coach to know track and field. We just got to need a coach to be able to be passionate about working with kids and working and being winners. And that's the aspect. And we can take that coach and make that coach look like a darn good coach based off of them fitting into the system and the profile because they enjoy winning and they want to try to win a state championship ring.
That's awesome, Shelton. That just a lot of value right there. If you're listening today on how Shelton and his staff, his team, his culture, the program has driven forward to win one of the toughest state titles there are out there in this country. So,
and one of the philosophies was, Mike, is a difference between being at practice and being engaged at practice. You have a lot of athletes that are at practice, but are they engaged at practice? Are they working on getting better at practice? Is that coach engaged at practice where they having conversation with the kids? It's a certain way that it should look where there should be engagement and everybody should be clicking on all cylinders at that practice session and that meet aspect of it instead of just being there and being present there. I've sent many kids home that we don't force kids to work out. That's not my thing. If you don't want to work out, you don't have to work out. You can leave. Because we have that culture where we need you engaged. We need you working on these items that we need to address to get better. That way we can be prepared for the competition on the weekends.
Being present, right? Being present at practice, being present as a coach, being present in these kids' lives. Absolutely. That's it, man. You're doing an amazing job.
My high school coach say what you mean and mean what you say.
I love it.
You never grow wrong with that. So say what you mean and mean what you say, then kids are going to respect you. Big time if that's the case.
That's awesome. Coach, man, thank you so much for being here today. Again, congratulations. Thanks to the USTFCCCA and the U.S. Marines for putting on this program. They named 50 boys and 50 high school girls, high school boys and girls coaches of the year, one for each state. And then they have the unbelievable task of trying to pick out one to be the national. And this year, Shelton Ervin came home with the prize. And again, it's a staff. You've heard him talk about the rest of his staff and the culture and the program and administrators. It takes a whole village here, and you're doing a great job with that village, Coach, man. Just and
establishing that culture, that village also extends to my basketball coaches support track athletes. The football coaches see them in the app and they support them. Hey, good job this weekend on the Tomorrow Relay. Basketball coach, volleyball coach, high five. If that athletic coordinator, that campus coordinator establish a culture where all those sports are supporting success, all sports, whatever that looks like, minor or small, you create a culture where success is mandatory because everybody wants to have that high five and really be respected. So
absolutely, Coach, man, thank you for being here today. As a high school teacher, man, you ain't got many hours in the day to just give to somebody like me.
I don't know. So, but thanks to my administration, obviously Troy Kite, who's the Humble ISD athletic director, and Jenna Williams, who's the assistant athletic director, extremely supportive of every needs that we have. My building principal was the baseball coach when I opened the school in 2009. He's now the head principal, and he's extremely supportive of my program and the program in general. And then our campus coordinators, who's the head football coach and the head basketball coach, is extremely supportive. They go to the state meets, they go to the district championships, they high-fiving kids when they're coming off the track and being successful. They're challenging kids for more, to be better or be greater. I would recommend, I'll leave you with this, Mike. I recommend the book, From Good to Great. If you read the book From Good to Great, and it's about Fortune 500 companies, but it also relates to your program and your philosophy and your mind frame. There's a lot of good programs out there, but there's not a lot of great programs out there. And a lot of kids will tell you that they want to be good, but in order to be successful in the state of Texas and win a state meet, you got to be great. You got to be almost dominant and you got to be perfect. So I challenge any, I'm an audiobook person. So if you get the audiobook of it, it'll read it to you on a flight or it'll read it to you in your car, but go pick up the book From Good to Great, and it'll tell you how to be a level 5 leader and it tells you how to operate and get the most out of your program. And it's one of the books that really changed my life as far as my program goes.
It's always a good podcast when we get a book recommendation. I believe it's Jim Collins who wrote that book.
Jim Collins.
Yeah. You know, there's like I want to call it a part 2 and a part 3. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's make sure. Good. That's awesome. There it is. That's what a great book recommendation, because it's not even like a new book. Like, that's been around for a while.
But it's a diamond in the rough. And of course, I can do all other books. I'm an audio books guy. I'm a psychology major. So I'm big on Tuesday with Maury, and I'm a guy out of Chicago area, Mitch Albom, who's also ESPN guy, but writes a lot of good books. But those audio books have been perfect for us, my development in mind frame.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm gonna let you get back to it, Coach. Thank you again for being here. Join us next week. So this is really cool. So I was able to finagle this and get the boys coach of the year here, right? Next week, Mike McCabe. Now I got to make sure I apologize him for his name. Mike McCabe, Union Catholic, New Jersey, the girls coach of the year. I'm interested to see the parallels to Coach Ervin's story, like how he runs his program and the staff. I'm going to be interested to see. I bet there's a lot of similarities. Championship programs are championship programs for a reason. So I'm going to be interested to see what kind of parallels we have over there. So, Coach, thanks for your time today. Thank you for your time here listening. Again, I'm just so humbled that you'd spend 30 minutes to, sometimes 2 and 3 hours here listening to these great coaches' stories. So humbled that Coach Ervin would be with us today. Join us next week. We're going to do it again with the girls USTFCCCA High School Coach of the Year. Thanks and have a great day.
Yeah, I see you in Orlando next in a couple of months.
That's right. Hey, first drinks on me, buddy. Water, Pepsi, whatever you want.
I'm holding to it. Thanks, Mike.